Hello, my friends. My name is Carly, and welcome back to my channel, Owning Authenticity. I'm so glad you're here. This message is specifically designed and being released in conjunction with the Aries new moon solar eclipse that is happening on April 8th. And that is a total solar eclipse. That is a supercharged new moon, aka new beginnings. And with eclipses, often new beginnings that are growing out of endings. However, whenever you are finding this message, these three topics are pretty evergreen, I would say. You can enjoy this message anytime. And I also wanted to remind you in that spirit that there are playlists in the description box for each of the 12 natal north nodes. So no matter where your personal north node is in your chart, I have done several readings at this point for each of those north nodes. So if you're interested in exploring more your own personal soul's evolutionary journey, which is what the North Node represents, those are there for you. So by all means, check those out in the description. Also in the description, I am hosting a 4-week mini program. I am doing one currently at the time I'm recording this for eclipse season. That is 4 Fridays of sessions to walk us through the eclipse season. However, this will be kind of a rolling thing. So when the 4 weeks is over, the next 4-week program will begin. So the links to check out, like which version are we on, are in the description box. And it is $20 for a seat. It's $40 for VIP, which lets you stay 45 extra minutes for the VIP after party, where we get to unpack and discuss in group form of what did we learn today? What came up for you? What are the sticking points? Like what else, So just some extra processing time for those in VIP. And the one that is starting, we have a new 4-week program starting April 26th. And that will run through May 17th. So that's 4 Fridays. And that is the worthiness habit. So how to make worthiness a habit in your life, which I feel like is a perfect complement to Taurus season, which is what's going on at that time. So by all means, check those out. And without further ado, let's get into the meat and potatoes of what we're here to talk about, being self-trust, boundaries, and divine selfishness. So first off, self-trust, what does that mean? I mean, the term itself, I feel like is pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward. It means to listen to and trust yourself. Trust that you are right. And when others disagree with you, maybe they're wrong, right? Like we're letting ourselves be right. We're letting ourselves decide. And there are, of course, I can almost hear people coming through the screens. This is a classic case of like what it looks like when you're not 100% trusting yourself. But like fire energy is our spark of life force. It's our intuition. It's our guiding light inside of ourselves. And Aries being the primal fire sign, and this new moon happening in this primal fire sign, a rebirth, a new birth in our ability to trust that we are a divine life that came here for a reason, and that nobody else around us has access to our guidance. We do. Only us. And so if we don't follow our guidance, nobody's going to follow our guidance. And so trusting ourselves, meaning listening inside ourselves, and really this comes into play mostly in the arena of your own personal life. And the two, the boundaries and the divine selfishness, these are two areas where self-trust comes in huge, comes in hot, as really super important. But also just answering the question, what do you want? What do you want and what do you not want? And as often as possible, getting off the subject of what you don't want and back onto the subject of what you do want, because law of attraction, law of resonance, like the universe doesn't hear what we say. The universe hears what we're giving our attention to. What we spend our attention on is the most potent and powerful form of our own power. right? Like what we spend our money on, same thing, not quite as powerful though. And why is that? Because we have way more attention to spend than money, typically. And I don't care how rich you are, that's always true. We have 70,000 thoughts a day. Okay, and how many of those thoughts a day are pointed in the direction of what you want instead of railing against what it is that you don't want? This is an exercise that is like, again, when we think about fire energy and this new moon happening in Aries, and the opposite being Libra or air energy, the difference being fire burns and that's it, right? Fire is just hot. Fire just sparks and takes hold. And with air energy, there is often, well, what about this? And what about from their perspective? And let me ask this person what their opinion is. And there are a lot more variables in the equation when it comes to air energy as opposed to fire energy. And so when we have heavy air energy in our chart, it is very common to be having other people's voices inside our mind. And even like what I was about to say, as far as like, I can hear people coming through the screen. I am sitting in a room all by myself. Okay, I'm in a moment where nobody else is here with me. And yet in my mind, I can hear what some people were probably going to say to what it was that I was offering. And so that split of like, who are you listening to? That's how fast it can happen. Of like, well, I really want this, but so-and-so would say that that's selfish or that's just being a liar, like whatever it is. Like, okay, even if they would say that, how is that relevant to your right here, right now moment? And I am very much like pointing this back at myself because you see how easy it is to do that. How much of a balance there is between all 12 of the zodiac signs, all 4 of the divine elements, fire, air, earth, water. We need them all. So like, it's not like, we're supposed to listen to ourselves and that's it. That's like the end of the story, self-trust, and screw everybody else. Like, that's not what I'm advocating for. But especially at this new moon, it is a time to think about, how often am I letting other people's voices get in my head? How often am I talking about what other people are doing that I don't like instead of just leading by example and doing it the way that I want it done? Right? How often am I doing that? And like, I want to go through just a few signs here of signs that you're not really trusting yourself. And the first one is complaining about what you don't want instead of just declaring what you do want. The second sign is needing others to be different. And that one on its face may not be totally like clear as far as like, why is that a sign I don't trust myself? Like, he shouldn't be allowed to talk to me that way. Why are you putting up with it? Why do you tolerate that? Why don't you give it right back to him or cut him off or start locking your door instead of leaving it wide open? Like, which is going to take us into the next topic of boundaries. But needing other people to be different is focusing on them and what they are doing. And that's what we do in air energy. We observe what others are doing. And we have air energy for a reason. We are absolutely meant to be social animals and be in cooperative environments. But self-trust. How often are you observing what other people are doing versus listening inside yourself for what you want? And the last signs I have for a sign that self-trust may be lacking in an individual are perfectionism and fear of failure. So again, you got to ask yourself why. Why are you being a perfectionist? Well, I'm not allowed to make a mistake. Which another way to say that is I don't trust myself to make a mistake. And fear of failure, same thing. Like, what does failure mean? And for that matter, what does success mean? Right? Like, none of it has anything to do with you being worthy or not. None of it has anything to do with you being whole and enough and worthy of being listened to, right? Like, when we fear failure, it's often because we think we're going to lose something when we fail. And then you got to ask yourself, like, what would you lose? Because you can never lose your own self-trust unless you take it away from yourself. So this is one of the pieces that my own spiritual journey has often brought me back to, is trusting in myself, even when other people don't understand, even when I make a mistake, even when other people decide they don't want to be in my life anymore. Just because other people like it doesn't mean you're doing the right thing. Just because other people don't like it doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. So I want to talk just a little bit now about how to trust yourself, right? Like, okay, great, you sold me. Now, what do I do, right? Like, how do I actually increase my self-trust? Number one, it's a muscle. Every single practice inside of ourselves, it's a muscle, and it's a matter of like, how often do you practice this? And so like a muscle, we got to train it. We got to start small and gradually increase the weight as our muscle increases. And what is the weight? The weight in this case of trusting yourself is going against the grain of what other people are doing, what other people expect. Trusting yourself to do what you know is right, regardless of who is going to agree with you. And so practice believing in yourself. Like, for example, you feeling inside of yourself, and again, we're going to talk about this a lot in the boundaries conversation, but you feeling inside yourself what you want and going with it and taking the baby steps. Like, for example, I have a video that has been floating in my mind, I say for like a week, but when I really think about it, like, this topic has been wanting to be made into a video for like years at this point, maybe since the beginning of me doing my YouTube journey. And I've never made this video. And why not? Right? Like, this is evidence of lack of self-trust. This is me worrying about what other people are going to think. This is me feeling like I'm going to lose something or get something I don't want from others if I listen to myself and do what it is that I want to do. And this practice of self-trust and taking it small and gradually increasing the weight, like, you know, you may say like, well, that's really smart in some cases because, you know, people just aren't ready for that topic, or, you know, like, yeah, there's consequences. There's a price to doing, saying what you want to say. Like, and maybe there is, but here's the thing. I'm not even letting myself say it. It's not like I made the video and now I'm scared about releasing it. I'm scared about making it. And that's between me and me. Okay. So like, in my evolution, in my like daily evolution of like meeting my edge and stretching beyond it, where I'm at with my baby steps is like, I need to make this video. And that has nothing to do with releasing the video. That has nothing to do with other people seeing it or knowing what this topic is. Right? Like, for me to make the video is for me to trust that I am allowed to express what is inside of me to express. That's it. And once it's out, chances are that either at that point I will feel more comfortable releasing it, or I can sit on it for a little while and release it when I'm ready. That part of it of like telling the other person, telling the other people, posting it on my YouTube channel, like, that has nothing to do with self-trust, right? Like, when we're holding our expression inside of us, expressing ourselves in a quiet room only to ourselves is the first act of self-trust. And as much as I have grown in this area and my muscles are huge compared to the little peas that they used to be, still, and always, I would imagine, there are the next little bit of scary things that we have to build our way up into trusting ourselves, right? So self-trust is something that is a practice. We practice believing in ourselves. We look for the evidence of where we've done well in the past, right? Where have you spoken your truth and there wasn't a price to pay? Where have you stepped beyond your comfort zone and people celebrated what it was that you were showing them? Like, even as I'm asking this, I have like evidence coming to my mind of like, ooh, this time and that person and this was really good. We get so in our head, which again is an air energy thing. And this Aries new moon solar eclipse is about coming down into our body, into our divine spark, and sparking that quick towards what it is that we want. So those are my advice for self-trust. And now let's talk about boundaries, okay? Boundaries, aka also known as self-protection. And no boundaries. What does it mean when you don't have boundaries? AKA also known as self-harm. Okay, so like boundaries is a word that gets thrown around a lot. And for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to talk about it in terms of either you're self-harming or you're self-protecting, because boundaries are not for other people. The boundary is not so that other people will be different or so that other people will treat you different. Boundaries are not a means of controlling what other people are doing, right? Like, I have a boundary that you have to knock to enter my house. Well, here's one way to get people to knock is to lock your door. Okay. So like, I think a lot of times we end up trying to sort out how other people are treating us with the words that we're saying. We try to tell them how to be, what is the right way to treat me. And meanwhile, we leave ourselves open for receiving any and all kinds of treatment. And so the boundaries that we put around ourselves are how we protect ourselves, are how we love ourselves. And it is in that demonstration of us treating us the way that we deserve to be treated that other people learn how to treat us. When we are willing to tolerate subpar behavior from other people, that shows them that we're tolerant. Look, she doesn't care. She'll put up with anything. And then it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. As opposed to when people are behaving in a subpar manner towards you, that's it. That's enough. We're done here. Nope, not allowed. Wait, give me a second chance. I don't think so. No, you've demonstrated who you are. I see. And I don't put up with that, right? Like, I don't deserve to be treated that way. Why would I stay? Why would I give you a second chance to harm me even more? Why would I do that? Right? And this is easier said than done, because kids, especially as we're raised as children, we are trained to not have boundaries. Like, I've heard way too many people to count at this point say, well, I didn't have good role models for setting boundaries. Nobody did. Kids are taught to not have boundaries. Kids are taught to obey. Right? Like, kids are taught to listen to what the grown-up says. Find the authority figure and listen to what they're saying. That's how kids are raised. So teaching a kid to have boundaries is a revolutionary act. And as an adult, teaching yourself to have boundaries is a revolutionary act. Because again, it goes back to that whole fire energy or air energy. Are you observing the others and their reaction? Or are you listening to yourself? Are you trusting yourself that this doesn't feel good and therefore I'm putting a stop to it right now? Oh, well, I didn't. Nope. Nope. No more. No more. Nope. Well, I told him and he didn't listen. Your space is sovereign. You get to decide who comes into your space, how long they stay, and when they should leave. That is 100% up to you. That is the whole point of boundaries. That's like the premise, the foundational premise of boundaries, is that you are a sovereign being, that you hold the power to create your reality exactly as you want it to be. And it always comes back to, are you willing to protect yourself, or are you willing to allow yourself to be harmed? Because other people are how they are. They don't have to be different. They don't have to treat you different. That's not what boundaries are for. Boundaries are for you to prove to yourself that you are not willing to allow yourself to be harmed. And you do that by putting an end to any situation that is harming you. And I understand if the relationship is important to you and you do want to start with a conversation, you do want to make it clear that I will not be accepting that any longer. No, you will not speak to me, or this is the consequence. Say it one more time and you'll never come back here. I mean, I understand. Like, if the relationship is important, that's what talking was invented for. It's like finding cooperation and collaboration between people. And if you want people in your life, then chances are you want to have a conversation with them about your boundaries before you like pull the ripcord and like kick them out of your life for good. I totally understand that. But you got to enforce that consequence when the time comes, if the time comes. Right? Like I said, you do that one more time and you won't be here anymore. And so now you're leaving. Well, but I didn't mean it, and I was this and this and this and this, and please and please and please, one more chance. No, you've demonstrated to me twice now that you can't be trusted in my environment. You harm me when you're here. And so you gotta go. And again, that's coming back to that foundation of self-trust, of like, well, I said it and they don't like it. They don't listen to me. Well, but you decided that that was right and you wanted that and that's what felt right to you. And at that point, it doesn't matter how people respond. And that is the part that's really difficult. And I love this quote that I saw recently, which is, be willing to embrace the solitude that comes when you level up your standards. Right? Like when you will no longer tolerate the bullshit, chances are those people, they won't be in your life anymore. And for a short time, you may be in the company of yourself. And that's okay. Hopefully. Right? That's what keeps a lot of us stuck in low standards and stuck in self-harming behavior or in toxic relationships with other people. It's like, well, but I want them in my life. Okay. Then let them be there. But it sounds like it's hurting you. And as long as you're putting up with it, they don't have to be different. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And the only one that we have control over to change is ourselves. So that's my talk around boundaries, aka self-protection and lack of self-harm, right? We're growing out of our own self-harming behaviors when we're getting good at setting boundaries, which is very cool in my opinion. And the last thing we're going to talk about is divine selfishness. So divine selfishness is my attempt at reclaiming and unshaming a very popular insult that is thrown at Aries energy, which is that it's selfish, that it's self-centered, that it only thinks about itself. And if you've been listening to this conversation, that's kind of what I'm advocating for. Often the people who believe in selfishness the least are the ones who need it the most. Okay, so that's my own hypothesis. I'd love to hear your reaction in the comments. But with divine selfishness, I think about the redwood trees in California, these gigantic, tall, beautiful, trees, and they are like abnormally huge for trees, okay? And you can only imagine what goes on in the inner workings of the consciousness of the tree, but they're not standing around being like, I think I'm big enough. I think I'm big enough. I think I'll stop drinking water out of the ground and leave it there for somebody else. I think I'll stop absorbing this beautiful sunlight and leave it there for somebody else. Like, no. They are a mechanism of growth. They are a mechanism of absorbing resource and catalyzing that resource into their own expansion. Selfishness. That's like all it is absorbing resource and growing. That's what being selfish is. And anytime we think to ourselves, I better leave that for somebody else. I better, not take what it is that I really know that I want and need. And okay, so here's a perfect example of like, I used to, before I started my YouTube journey, one of the thoughts that I really had to get over in order to even create the channel and start posting videos was, I don't want to take up people's time. Who am I to take up people's time? So this was the resource. This was the resource that I could sense that I wanted. I want the attention. I want to make a video and I want people to listen to it and I want them to be impacted by it. But in order to do that, in order to grow to that size, I have to absorb their attention. I don't want to take up people's time. I better not make a video that's too long because I don't want to take up that much of their time. Who am I? I mean, they probably have so many more valuable things that they could be doing with their time. And the thing is, like, thousands of comments later, people appreciate me taking up their time. And if they don't, then they click off the video. There's also plenty of those people, hundreds of thousands of those people that watched 15 seconds and decided, not for me. I don't want her to take up my time. Okay. Right? Self-trust. Boundaries. I don't want this. It's not in my life anymore. Done. Easy peasy. And then there are all the people who like the videos. There are all the people who leave the comments on the videos. There are the people who book the sessions because they found my videos. These people appreciate that I showed up in a way of like being willing to soak up their time. Divine selfishness. And the thing about the redwood trees and the thing about this community and the thing about any of us growing into our own divine self, the true self that we came here to be, is that when we do that, we create a habitat for other people. We create an ecosystem around ourselves. Like you think about all the birds in the redwood trees gaining shelter from those branches. You think about all the things growing underneath them. You think about all the stuff happening in the soil with the roots. You think about the squirrels. You think about the woodpeckers. You think about all the animals, all the insects, all the everything that is served and housed and protected and sheltered by these trees getting so freaking huge. Absorbing resource and catalyzing it into whose growth? The growth of the birds? No, the growth of themselves. There is a purpose to us growing as big as we possibly can. And just like the others, I want to unpack this a little bit as far as like unpacking the shame around selfishness. Like I said at the beginning of this chapter, like the ones who have the most problems with selfishness are typically the ones who need it the most. And the thing about it is that we were taught to be selfless by others who would rather we make their life easier than our own life easier. So when other people tell you like, oh, you shouldn't be selfish, like typically they want you to continue to be there for them. They want you to continue serving their interests and their agenda rather than your own. And again, this goes right back to self-trust. Like who are you listening to? Who is your guidance? Is it the opinion of other people? Because they are so varied and multifaceted in their opinions that there's only chaos and noise when we open up to let other people be our guide, because you can ask 100 people what you should do and get 100 different opinions, versus you could listen inside yourself. What do you want? Not what should you do, but what do you want? And then do that. Right? And trust that that is, in fact, you on the path of absorbing the resources that you need to grow into the size that you are meant to be for the good of the all. And are you doing it for the good of the all? No. That's a distraction. That's paying attention to what other people are doing again, rather than what do you want? What do you want? And I know there are people out there who think, I don't even know what I want. But yes, we all always know what we want. And thinking, I don't know, is a limiting belief that keeps us from merging with what it is that we want. Often, most of the time, I would say people already know what they want and they're scared of what it is. So they're trying to talk themselves out of wanting it. They're like, well, but then I'd have to do this, and then I'd have, like, what if this happened? So no, not that. And then they're like, see, I don't know what I want. And it's like, yes, you do. You're just not letting yourself believe that you can have it. You're not trusting that you can handle it. So that's number one. And sometimes there's so much noise and chaos in the person's head put there by listening to other people that they genuinely do not know the difference between everybody's opinion and what it is that they want. But negative emotion is really compelling. And so the things that you don't want, the things that really make you mad or hurt your feelings or whatever the case is, that strong negative emotion, that is like the dark side of what it is that you want. Like, I hate it when people disrespect me. You want respect. Okay? So like, it's that simple of like taking your negative emotion of I don't want, or I hate this, or it pisses me off when this happens. That's the dark side of what you want. And all you got to do is flip it around to like, what do you want? Right? Like, it really hurts my feelings when people don't see me. Really hurts my feelings when I feel like they don't hear what I'm saying. Really hurts my feelings when they project their own whatever noise is in their head on top of what I'm saying, rather than listening to what I'm saying. Right? Like, all of these things are, I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be surrounded by people with clear enough energy to be able to hear me. The dark side of what we want and the light side of what we want. And just like I said at the very beginning, law of attraction doesn't hear our words. It only hears where we're shining our very powerful attention. And so it's a matter of, as often as possible, getting off the dark side, getting off the complaining train of what it is that we don't want, and instead flipping over to what it is that we do want. And divine selfishness says the fact that you're an extension of source energy, the creator of your own reality, says that you can have whatever you want. Anything that you want, it's yours. Abraham Hicks would say, by the time you're desiring it, that's proof that it's already done. Try that on, even for just like a few days, believing that if you want it, it's already done. And witness how often we will go back to pretending like we don't have it, complaining about the fact that it's absent, complaining about the opposite of it. And all of that just makes what we want even bigger. Because as soon as we want it, it's done. Right? Abraham says, ask and it is given. It's immediate. So, divine selfishness. Decide what you want. Be willing to absorb the resources that it takes to grow into this person who is the person living the life that you want to be living. All of that is within your own control. What other people do and say and think and believe and project back onto you, we have no control over any of that. But what we choose to believe and think and do and project onto ourselves, that is 100% under our span of control. And even more so when we trust ourselves, when we protect ourselves, aka put healthy boundaries around us, and stop tolerating anything that's not that. Stop tolerating anything that's harming you or taking away from your beautiful growth. It is within your control to end that at any time. I am so thankful for this message, the clarity that came through that wanted to be this message for this solar eclipse, or whenever you're finding this message. Remember, there are playlists down below for each of the natal north nodes, so you can dive more into your own personal north node. If you need help figuring out in your own natal chart, what is your north node? Like, what is my evolutionary journey? What's my karma that I brought with me? What's my destiny point that I'm trying to lean into? I would love to help you with that. I actually offer a one-on-one session specifically for unpacking your north node journey. Or we can do a natal chart reading, or we can just do an activation session to spark clarity. I have those on special. If you're watching this at the time of recording this for April, I have really low prices on my activation sessions. So if you've ever been interested in a one-on-one session with me, now is definitely the time. You can also check out the group program that I'm starting on April 26th that is 4 sessions for building our habit of worthiness, making worthiness a habit in your life. Believing that you deserve to have anything. You are worthy of whatever you want. That is what we'll be working on in that group. All of the details for all that yumminess is in the description box. I am wishing you a very, very yummy eclipse. I would love to hear what comes up for you, what's revealed to you during this powerful window of new beginnings and endings. And until next time, you take really good care of yourself. And so will I. Bye.